This topic of signing in blood and the blood price is a present theme in many different parts of the Game of Thrones series. It was heavily covered in the book and somewhat in the TV series, the extremely fraudulent TV series, and is likely the reason why the book series cuts off when it gets around the portion about the so-called, or at least what was called in the story, the Iron Bank. And now a different part of the book explains what the Iron Bank deals in based off the iron price. But let's go ahead and look at how the Iron Bank operates first. In the story, they do not necessarily deal with exchange of money, as most of us are taught to think about banking and finance. Instead, they finance kingdoms with a loan of either resources, armies, possibly weapons, or could be even money. But they do not ask for money in return. Instead, they require something else. And taking a loan from the Iron Bank in the story essentially puts a kingdom under the control of the bank. The kingdom in that sense becomes collateral, but it goes beyond just that, as we'll look further into this concept. Now, ironically, or perhaps not ironically, but disturbingly, there is a Iron Bank here in the United States. The National Iron Bank. According to their mission statement, it states, "The National Iron Bank strives to be the market's most trusted and sought after bank." As in Game of Thrones, the Iron Bank was the most sought after. Helping consumers and businesses achieve their evolving financial goals while providing the highest level of customer service. That sounds like if you get a loan from them, they own you, basically. Now, as far as history goes, according to their website, it said it was established in 1847. That's a year that coincides with a lot. National Iron Bank is New England's oldest private bank. The mid-1800s was a prosperous time in and around the Housatonic Valley. The local residents worked in the ore beds, or the many iron works that were in almost non-stop operation up and down the river. They worked for the railroad or in any of the countless small businesses and industries that grew up along the frequented transit routes, or they worked in the abundant acres of farmland that itself created a profitable industry. The Iron Bank was established to meet the resulting credit demands and financial needs of the thriving community. In May of 1847, a charter was granted by a special act of the General Assembly to establish a bank at Falls Village called the Iron Bank. First meeting of stockholders was called for and held at Hunt's Hotel in Canaan. Interesting name. On August 17th, after which William H. Walton was chosen as president. Appointed clerk was Alexander H. Hawley, who later became governor of Connecticut. And of course, that Walton name is the last name of Sam Walton, who of course is accredited with running all of the Walmart franchises. And the bank opened less than 2 months later on October 11th with assets of $193,725. It sealed the iron worker with his trip hammer, made its first appearance the following month. It was printed on the $10 bills issued by the bank. Also issued were $1, $2, $3, $5, and later $20 bills. Now it's interesting because if you look at the Constitution, it states that the government only has the ability to mint, but not print. Mint. So here you have a bank that's printing money. And of course, you got all these other regulations, and not to mention the Congress that we've had has been fraudulent for a while. A lot of evidence of that. Now, as far as the confirmation that the Iron Bank deals in blood, which of course in the TV series, in the books, it's called the Iron Bank of Braavos. The Ironborn state that you have to pay the iron price. So, like when Theon goes to meet his father and he talks about purchasing something, father asks if he paid the iron price, to which he says he paid with golden. So it's accused of being not an Ironborn. Now, the iron price is clearly the price of blood, because it is either paid in the blood of someone else or your own in some form. And so we get all of this revolving around iron and blood, and of course one of the primary components in blood is in fact iron. No coincidence there. So basically these bankers deal with blood. Now, how do they do that? And does this coincide with the concept of a blood bank? Possibly. That would take more research to determine. However, this element of signatures in blood packs and things like that, it's very old and it can be found in many different places. The Cosa Nostra, for example, which is Italian for our thing, La Cosa Nostra, they were reported to have signed in blood. And it's well depicted, the idea of them cutting their hand or something. But I'm sure a finger prick would suffice, as is customary in different places today. Even it's common practice in many places, is the blood promise. This, of course, also relates to a passage in the Constitution under Section 3, Article 3. It states that Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment for treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person detained. So what they're actually talking about here in the corruption of blood, as looking it up, you'll find quite a lot of obfuscation and attempts to explain what it is in a manner that's confusing, misleading, and obfuscatory or mystification. No surprise, considering most things are owned by a blood bank. And the idea of a corruption of blood relates to a generational promise. So if somebody signs over their blood, they're signing over anyone who's attached to that blood, anyone who shares that blood, all their relatives and all their children, essentially. That's where you get into the generational promise idea, which you see reflected in a lot of places, but mainly in church and current religious propaganda of the so-called New Age propaganda of climate change and whatnot, where you see this message reflected about the generational promise and things that have to do with generations, which of course relates to this idea of blood corruption. You also see a huge emphasis on blood type and blood percentages. There's quite a lot of programs in the U.S. corporate government and all over the globe that specifically deal with blood percentages for gaining special favor, for gaining positions in offices, for gaining jobs, for gaining contracts with the government, for gaining all kinds of things. There are specifically programs where people have to prove blood percentage of something, which most of us will obviously find ridiculous. But the purpose of all of this generational connection to blood is essentially, it's like a claim over humanity, but through the signature of somebody who signed a pact in blood before and put their blood up as collateral for a loan. So most people would think that collateral for a loan would encompass something of value. Of course, blood has a lot of value, but Most people would think of this as maybe a house. Of course, we're taught to think of it this way: house or money. But if you look at the financial industry, it will admit that one concept of collateral that's in common use today is putting someone's business up as collateral. So what is a business? A business is a collection of paperwork, its gains, but it also encompasses the employees. So imagine, unbeknownst to him, obviously, some small business owner goes and signs away his employees to a bank. Now, they own those employees as far as the capacity of being an employee of that company. The bank does. So that is, in a sense, signing away other people over as collateral. And of course, you can find this replicated in many different areas. And it's common practice, and of course, a lot of people that do it are ignorant of what they're really doing, because we're taught it's not a big deal. Of course, this is the concept of the deal with the devil, where he's a liar, and so whenever you make a deal with him, it's essentially you'll never pay off the debt. It's forever. And once you make a deal with the devil, you get tricked into it for life. You find this also represented in gang signs and symbols everywhere. So it's the blood and the Crips. The Bloods and the Crips. And naturally, once you realize this concept, it begins to manifest itself, or at least you begin to become more aware of it in various areas of society in your life, and how it's so present, and it forms the basis for nearly every conflict and every issue that people have throughout all of our lifetimes. This sort of idea of a blood signature and a promise to a blood bank, which somebody made at some point for a loan of something, but they, as far as those people see it, doomed themselves to a life of servitude based off their blood, because it's their blood that the bank wants to collect. Repo, shall we say. They said, imagine blood repo, man. But naturally, the Constitution of the United States specifically seeks to address this particular issue, at least as far as it was used in the past. Clearly, anybody who believes in the idea of a blood pact and the promise of blood for something is in violation and against the Constitution, whereas somebody who believes in the Constitution, they can't sign blood pacts, because that's clearly something that the people at the time had an issue with. And it's entirely possible that other passages in the Constitution had talked about this very thing, but it had been written out, considering nearly everything today is owned by some sort of shady institution. Not shady in the sense of like they're really clandestine, just shady as in they're like petty criminals. It's what you'd expect, liars and whatnot, cheats, frauds. But they basically own everything because of these blood pacts. People have put this idea of a blood pact in a superior position to other laws and customs. And it's pretty evident in many places. But if you like this content, please share it, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.